strikes. We had a country that was a mess. We were paying high taxes. We were paying, and outside of this artificial event that took place 2 months ago, and I'm going to build the country into stronger and better than it was even then. And it's already.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trash Panda Pundits. This is episode 002, titled The Event. This is Raydio.
And this is Mayhem.
How's it going today, Mayhem?
Not too bad. So apparently, according to the president, we've got a artificial event on our hands. What do you think about that?
Well, I like that he brought that forward. I like the particular choice of words, per se. He's basically just putting out there everything that we've been thinking pretty much this whole time. So I love it.
What's another word for artificial?
Let's just say fake.
Okay. So we've heard about the fake news, and now we're hearing about a fake event. So ultimately, that's what our show's going to be about today. There's going to be some generalities as far as how we speak about things, obviously, because we don't want to get a strike. Nor do we want our video taken down, because we want you guys to be able to see this and gain some information, maybe become informed about some things that you weren't before. So that's kind of what we're looking at today.
I think we're just going to try and avoid some specific words and titles. That should help out quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not sure what we're talking about, you can always throw us a comment, and we can respond to that comment directly, or we can address it in the next show. But we're trying to keep this video up, so we're not going to get into specific terms on things and whatnot. So,
that being said, maybe we should get into some drops and kind of go over what this episode is going to be about.
Yeah, so we've got, let's see here, looks like about 7 drops we're going to go over. They are Q drops, and we'll be doing another video later on about Q and what that all comes down to, and the information contained in the drops. The first drop we're going to talk about is 4306. So the question that comes with that drop is, how do you convince people a vaccine is necessary, or that it's critical? So there's an article that was put out, and it's pertaining to influenza deaths request correction. So I'll just read a quick paragraph from that to kind of sum up what that article was about. Apparently, U.S. data on influenza deaths are false and misleading. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, acknowledges a difference between flu death and flu-associated death, yet uses the terms interchangeably. Additionally, there are significant statistical incompatibilities between official estimates and national vital statistics data. Compounding these problems is marketing of fear, a CDC communication strategy in which medical experts predict dire outcomes during flu seasons. So this will apply to the event data reports. So kind of what you're looking at there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the modeling that came out in the initial briefings about what was going on with this event, predicting dire outcomes. If you remember the numbers that were put out there initially, pretty high.
I think we were talking about like 2+ million people going to die at some point there, right?
It was out there, and then slowly it dropped down to, I believe, 100,000. So that's interesting. So this article is kind of on point with, a strategy that is putting out there fear. And, fear is going to be kind of a big focal point of this podcast about, what you're experiencing in your day-to-day life.
So let me see if I understand this right. So what you're saying is that the CDC uses one model to justify influenza deaths and related deaths, but when it came to the event, they used a different, separate model. Is that pretty much what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what appears to be going on. There was also a model that was put out not too long ago, and dates back to 2014. That'll be up here on the screen over here. But it just shows spikes in influenza and pneumonia over the years. And back in 2014, at this time of year, this exact same time, the spike in 2014 was way, way higher than it is right now with the event. So that's something to look into. You can look at that graph over there in the corner and reference that. And that came from the CDC. So there you go.
Well, that's pretty interesting. And I can't remember the last time we quarantined for the flu, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's move to post number 4296. Post is pretty short, but basically what it's saying is that on May 6th, 2020, you have the media in the press room not wearing masks. Then May 8th, 2020, same press, same room. Lo and behold, everybody's wearing a mask. So I think this kind of ties into your last post that you just talked about. And basically, at the bottom of the post, it says PANDEM in the kill box. I see. And how do you get people to do what you want them to do? Well, you make them afraid. And if I was looking at this and I seen one day they weren't wearing a mask and 2 days later they were, well, that might strike some concern to me, but that's just me. But, you know, it's a ploy. Just them playing their game, wanting to do what they want to do. Make sure that you guys stay afraid, and hopefully we can help you make sure that this isn't as bad as they like to think it is.
Well, and I mean, looking at the pictures over there, you've got May 6th, when we would have been more in the thick of it than 2 days later, you would imagine. Yet they're not wearing masks. And so then 2 days later, all of a sudden they are. So what happened there that we needed to increase or push people to think that they needed to wear a mask? That's what Raydio was talking about. So that's a good post, although it's short. The pictures provided paint 1,000 words, as you like to say. So we'll move on from that post. Following that post, and so we're actually working from the top down, and you'll see those posts as we post them up there in the corner. But then we've got post 4282. So this speaks about HCQ. HCQ is the drug that the president was talking about that he first came out with, and was expressing that it was worth a try. His usual term of "what do you have to lose" came out in regards to taking that.
I think what the media was trying to push was, well, what do you got to lose? Well, maybe my life. But as we can all tell, that's really not the case.
Well, and something you have to look at in regards to this post is it announces that there was a full attack on the HCQ drug that was put out by the Dems. You watch mainstream media, you listen to some of the politicians talking, and they were going full bore at it, saying, I wouldn't want you to take that. I don't want you to die, blah, blah, blah. It just kept rolling, because here again, we're dealing with fear, and the best way to control a population is to impose some form of fear on them. One of the questions you have to ask yourself, and you didn't none of us initially knew this when he first came out about HCQ, but he had been taking it all along. And so then all of a sudden, as a certain person from California with a freezer full of ice cream likes to say, she prays for him every single day. And she said that even after he was taking the HCQ. So that's something to think about. Here's another question that you might want to ask yourself is why wouldn't the media want to find a possible solution for this event that we're dealing with and as quick as possible? We're all in it together and we're going to get through this and safe and strong and, the terms that you hear on every single commercial. But why wouldn't the media, if they were so concerned for your safety and for your health, why wouldn't they want to help you or help all of us find a cure quicker than whatever? So, you have to question and ask yourself, why are they blocking the use of this?
It's almost if it is safe is a keyword for something else.
So, and then following that, another question you might want to ask yourself is, why doesn't the media want the pandemic to slow or come to a stop? So that's something you have to think about. Like, what is their ultimate goal? What are they trying to go after? What are they trying to push in regards to that? So that's something to pay attention to.
It kind of ties into some of the posts we've seen on Twitter that reference to like face masks. So same thing with the event. If face masks work, then why is everybody locked down? But if they don't work, well, then why do you have to wear one? So I think you got to kind of take this with the same premise as to, well, if there's something out there that works, why are we still being safe?
Well, another thing is like, why doesn't the media want society and all of us in general to heal and recover from this? Why is it still being pushed? You see some states that barely close down at all, and then you see others that are going to be locked down till the end of July, maybe into August. So what are they trying to do there? I think people are starting to wake up, and if you're watching this, I hope you have, as far as seeing what's truly going on there. Why doesn't the media want people to no longer fear going outside?
That's a good question. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe during the last event we had back in like 1917, after that event rolled through, one of the medical recommendations were that when the next event happened, that sunlight was going to be a major key in the healing process of that event. So, obviously sunlight is good. You need that. And if everybody stays sheltered inside and is not getting those communicable germs per se, well, then you're weakening your immune system. So, it's time to get outside, people. Let's, keep living our life like we were 3 months ago.
And so another piece to that is, and you've got to think about, since the president has been in office, he spoke quite a lot about China and how they've been screwing us over. So there again, there's another part of that. Why wouldn't the Democrats or the media want us to point the finger at China? Why did they initially always accuse him of being racist or xenophobic when he started talking about China the way he always did? So that's something to think about. Why don't they want you to return to work? I mean, honestly.
If you got to sit at home and wait for a handout to come to you, well, then, you'll probably do whatever they tell you to do. So, you need to get out there, you need to work, live your life like you were, and not wait for somebody to take care of you, because that's how they control you.
And so kind of to wrap up this post, drop 4282, there's a couple things. One, you got to look at who and question who benefits the most from this event. Obviously, it's going to be politicians, and not just Democratic, but also Republican politicians. Politicians in general are going to, they don't necessarily have to go to work to get paid, and corruption is a major thing. And that's kind of why the two of us are where we're at right now and talking to you guys about this, is because corruption is a thing, and they're going to continue to get paid while you don't, and they really don't give two about what happens to you and your family and your job. They'll recover from this. They don't really care if you will or will not. And then one last piece to this is you have to think about the corporate media. The big question that I had, and I don't know if you had this, but we weren't even in quarantine a couple days, and already I'm seeing commercials on TV, saying stay home, stay safe, we're in this together. That whole tagline that you hear on every commercial and on every TV show that you watch. You got to think about that. Like, why are they saying that? Why do they keep putting that out? What is that about?
If I hear the new normal one more time, I might snap.
Well, I'm gonna make my own normal. So there ain't no new normal. It's my normal. But, so that it's about critical thinking and questioning what's really going on here. Why is it being pushed? What's the whole reason behind it? And I think we have a pretty good idea, especially with the timing. Except I don't think the timing necessarily worked out for them the way they thought it would. So, all right, rolling on. What's the next drop?
Well, let's roll into post number 4247. And in that post, it kind of ties to the last one. So we need to think, why was a certain representative in Chinatown in San Francisco walking around saying, hey, everything's fine, everything's okay,
Come on down.
we don't need to worry. And then, you find out the next month she's saying something else. Oh, we can't be doing this. Everybody's got to stay locked up inside. You got to take care of yourselves, be safe. I mean, what changed in a month? I don't think anything really. obviously the numbers changed, deaths and stuff, and that's a real thing, and we're not discrediting that. But
Well, and just to step aside from that for a minute, but we're not saying this isn't real. We both know it's real. I don't know anyone personally that's had it, but he's worked with people that, or has, whatever.
Right.
He's worked with people that have had it prior to expiring. So we're not questioning that, and I just wanted to throw that out there. Meant to do that in the beginning. We know it's real, so going back into it.
yeah, I wouldn't discredit any death or anything like that.
No.
That's not the case. But still, to this day, I don't personally know anybody that has it, and I really do feel for the victims and the families that have had this happen to them. So, again, we're not discrediting this. With that being said, why why did select governors push the event positive elderly people back into nursing homes? If we knew, because I'm pretty sure we all knew from the get-go that elderly were the most susceptible, and they are the group that has actually suffered the most from this event, why were certain governors pushing them back into nursing homes that were either positive or were recovering from being positive? You got to ask yourself these questions, like why would anybody in their right mind do that? Is it because they didn't have the space for them? Well, I can think of a certain governor in New York who had plenty of space. I'm pretty sure the president gave him a ship.
Well, he made more than enough space for him.
Yeah,
He even made a hospital outside.
A hospital outside. I think we put a hospital inside the Javits Center.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, why are we pushing people back into situations that we know we're not going to be good for them? Why would somebody want to do that?
Well, and I guess another good question that follows that is, if you have a grandmother or grandfather, or even a mother or father that are sick, or being, not necessarily sick, but they're being sent somewhere where there is someone that's sick that could, and they could, contract that and potentially die, would you do that? That's basically what it comes down to. And yeah, I know he doesn't know each and every one of these individuals, but that's a thought. Is you would want your family members to be treated the same as anybody else, and that's what it comes down to. So if you hear people saying, you've heard him say as recently as today that he was just following the orders and the guidelines that he'd been given by the president and his administration and the event team on this, which is total BS. We all know that, but whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better. But at the same time, you have to remember it's politics.
Well, and having worked in law enforcement, both of us, you're held at a higher standard. And that doesn't just go for law enforcement, that goes for politicians too. You are held to a higher standard. You should be, holding yourself responsible for things that maybe not the average person would. And that is why you're in the position you're in, because you're there to speak for the people and help the people. So it seems like an irresponsible move in my opinion.
Yes.
Next, I want to point out that influenza deaths are at an all-time record low. Now, why would that be? I mean, did people just stop getting influenza? Or
did it get replaced by something?
Maybe it got replaced by something. That's a good question.
I remember hearing, I think it was Dr. Burks say something about there's no longer influenza. I think it was a slip. Maybe I
something that we've known all our lives just suddenly up and disappeared because something else showed up. Well, I'm not buying it.
No, me either.
So the other thing we want to talk about is that there was a particular president of a country, and he seemed to have outsmarted everybody else. Tanzania is what it was.
Yeah.
And so he received some of the event tests, and then went ahead and tested some, let's say, not human samples.
Well, I remember one of them. I think it was a fruit.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, I think it was a pawpaw. Last time I checked, I don't think pawpaws have lungs, but I mean,
I think he also tested a goat.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And so those tests came back positive. So it seems as though that guy might have been thinking a little bit ahead of everybody else. And
Well, and he played a little trickery. So he gave the tests like actual names. I don't know, social security numbers or whatever, but yeah, so it seemed like they were actually people. So, he sent it to the head of his laboratory and they're like, yep, positive for the event. And then he's like, well, that was a fruit and a goat, but okay. But I heard tigers and cats can get it
yes,
possibly, so whatever.
yeah, well, I hope that's not true, but we'll see.
Yeah.
The other thing we need to ask ourselves is why are swing state deaths so much higher than maybe not swing state deaths? And we could say maybe those states are blue. That might be one thing to say, but
Well, but those are also the states that are going under heavy quarantine. So,
that's completely true.
and
The-
and why is that?
By no means does that make any sense by their own explanation. That's all I can say is,
Well,
hey, we need to stay locked down, but our deaths continue to rise while these states that are opening up, their deaths are going down, 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 and everybody's doing fine.
Well, I mean, look at our county. We have a couple large cities in our county, but overall, we are in the largest county in our state. And our event tests, positive tests, were supposed to be fairly high up there. And I'm not saying they weren't, but at the same time, we're pretty spread out as far as this county and where we live are concerned. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that we were quarantined the way we were. But whatever, we're better for it. We're a little bit more awake, per se.
So another thing that this post says, and we'll try and wrap this post up, but why are possible treatments and cures being prevented and attacked on pretty much the daily? You can turn on the news and I can guarantee you within 15 minutes you're going to hear somebody say how a cure or a treatment is probably not a good idea for you. And why would people do that? Let me rephrase this: in the USA, because it seems like the rest of the world, in most places, are pretty open to some of these cures and treatments.
Well,
And are being
France
successful.
just, if I remember correctly, I think it was France that ordered a bunch of HCQ, a ton of it. So obviously they're onto something there. Haven't heard much about that. That was like, I think, about a week ago, right about the same time that the president said he'd been on it and had been on it for a while. So,
And the last thing I want to touch upon is testing, testing, testing. Now, they were really pushing testing. Obviously we can't get out. We can't do anything until testing is, at a max, testing as many people as possible. Well, let me just tell you, I was at the local Walmart last weekend and they had a testing site out there and it looked like a ghost town. So is there not enough tests? Or are people just not wanting to get those tests? Do people not have, is it not as bad as they're saying it is? I don't know, but that was just my observation. I would think with pushing of testing, there would be a line, but there wasn't even a car there. So,
well, and that's not just here locally. I mean, that's everywhere. You're seeing videos on YouTube of people walking up even to hospitals in New York, and they're saying that they're, war zones, and it's just hectic, and all these medical professionals are going to war. I don't doubt that. I mean, the president attested to that and what he had seen and observed as far as some of those hospitals. But, it's on a case by case basis, and you really look at what's being put out there and what people are actually seeing. You can go on YouTube and find a bunch of videos that show hospitals that are pretty much empty and not a whole lot going on. And then you also think about what's happening to the people that are actually sick, the people that at home have a heart attack, or they don't know it yet, but they have cancer. They haven't been able to go to the hospital and find out those things. So not only is the event wiping out people, but it's also wiping out people indirectly who can't get to the hospital and get the medical care that they need to take care of themselves. So it's a big deal.
I think the thing that really pushed it for me was, I don't doubt that a hospital can be a war zone at times. I mean, it's not an easy job. Not many people, choose to do that. But when I started seeing on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook all these videos of medical professionals dancing around, having a good time, to me, I was like, wow, that doesn't seem like a war zone.
No.
But that's just me. So
I know there's downtime, but you think about some of these videos they were making and what you were seeing and the equipment that they were messing around with. Well, if you're a true hospital professional, you're going to have to clean that equipment when you're done with it. What if someone comes in and is failing respiratory wise? You got to get that equipment situated. So that's what, angers a lot of us when we see that is making light of what has been told to us is a pretty significant event. So it's kind of where we sit with that.
let's jump into the next post.
All right. So next post is 4245. So this covers quite a lot. Don't know how necessarily how I'm going to break it down, but I'm just going to kind of roll with it. But you've got to think about and got to question basically why are treatments and cures being banned, attacked, and targeted? Is the evidence overwhelming? Well, you've got that one. I want to say she was a Democratic governor from maybe, and don't quote me on this because I don't know that I'm correct, but Illinois, and I think she had taken HCQ when she came down with the event, and she praised the president for putting that out there and allowing her doctor to become aware of that was a potential cure, and sure enough, she was good to go in a couple of days.
I think she actually visited the White House too.
Yeah, no, because he spoke with some people that had contracted the event and then had beaten it. And that was very interesting to see as far as that interaction. But she got a bunch of flack from her colleagues after she praised the president for putting out there about HCQ.
It was almost like they wanted to run her out of the party.
Yeah, well,
But
they're doing that to a couple right now. So
right.
get in where you can fit in. The question is the evidence overwhelming for HCQ? Don't know. It's still something, it looks like it is for the most part. It looks like it's working fairly well. As we showed earlier, there's a video from Fox News where they're talking to a doctor about how quick treatment can be with that specific drug. But what it boils down to is you got to ask yourself, how do you keep people living in fair? How do you keep people divided? Division, divisiveness is one of their key ingredients to controlling us as a population.
So you mean like racial division or political division?
I mean, I think it's division everywhere. It doesn't matter what it is,
Believing in the event, not believing in the event division.
Yeah, I mean, even religious division, you look at the attacks right now on churches and things like that. You can go to a liquor store. You can't go to an AA meeting, even if you have a liquor problem, drinking problem. Can't go to a church, and so there's that division between those that want to do that, whether you do or you don't, doesn't matter. It's just saying those that do aren't being allowed to. And so there's division between, different sects of people that worship things and all that. So division is a big piece. Something else that's come up that I don't think everybody's keen to and realizes. I hope you are, but it's justified vote by mail. If everybody's locked down to their houses and isn't going out, and I think, do we have an election this year?
We do have an election this year.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. So I mean, if you're stuck in your house, well, hell, you can vote by mail. I mean, what's the big deal? Well, there's a big deal to it, because those votes can be messed with, can be lost. You've seen all the mail-in ballots that have been sent to millions of people in California, and New York, or New Jersey, and some other states.
So what you're saying is that the United States Postal Service is not reliable?
Oh, no, I think they're very reliable.
Okay.
There might be maybe a couple bad carriers out there, but overall, no, they're reliable. It's just there's there can be some. I'm trying to search for the word. I don't have it.
No. Well, I think one thing we could touch upon is like in our own backyard, the Denver Public Health Department just shut down a postal hub that takes care of all of Colorado and all of Wyoming due to the event. So I think that's
Is it still shut down?
Yeah, I don't know if it's still shut down, but I know that it was.
I've been seeing people say that they can't shut it down, but I don't know the specifics of that.
So I think that if you get those kind of things in people's heads, it'll start to seem like common, and that's how it starts.
Well, and also, this event is making obviously people dependent on government. Um, in my line of work, which is tattooing, um, I've been getting a lot of people's stimulus checks. I'm not complaining, not at all.
Spend that stimulus money locally, people.
Yeah, but people are getting these stimulus checks and this money, and it's exciting at first, but really when you look at the amount and then what it could potentially do to our children in the future, is it really truly worth it? But by getting these checks, and I'm not against it, the president signed off on it, but you got to kind of look ahead in the future and kind of recognize what kind of impact that's going to have on our kids and on our grandkids and on their kids and stuff like that. So, but by doing that, people are like, oh, well, maybe the government's not that bad. So they're becoming a little bit more dependent on government through that.
And I'm a big, should I say, sympathizer of that. I think we had a conversation in our family about the debt and how, obviously me and my wife, we're probably not going to pay for that. It's going to be our kids' kids, and probably their kids' kids are going to end up paying for it. So I'm not a big supporter of just printing up money and just handing out stuff to everybody because, this didn't really need to happen, and we can all get back to work and start doing our thing and start, making our way again. But to just be out there just printing up trillions and trillions of dollars and, giving money to, certain programs that I don't really necessarily believe in. So I'm not a big proponent of just printing up money and handing it out to everybody.
Well, and so the big part of this post is I've had some conversations with some people recently, and they're always, one of their first statements when we have the conversation is, I'm not trying to make this political, and I think ultimately when we're talking about the event, you've got to look at it with that kind of a tint to it as far as it being political. And so I'm going to go through basically a list of items of why, we feel, and through the research we've done and what's been provided to us in this drops, that it is political. So one, you've got to think about, how do you kill the economic gains that the president was able to make, this year, let alone the last several years that he's been our president. Look at the unemployment record. The unemployment record was the lowest we've ever seen it, and now it's skyrocketing because of this event. What about the rallies? I went to a rally in Colorado Springs just a couple months ago. Great time. Man, I love you guys. It was a good time. Like, it was straight up love out there. Everybody, like total strangers, just coming together, talking. I mean, there was a group of a couple drunks that, but nonetheless, they were still fun to watch until they got carted off. But
sounds like a normal Friday night for some people.
Yeah, they were characters. I'll leave it at that. But the rallies, no longer because of this event are we able to be in close proximity. So you can't have rallies because you're standing in line for 8 hours. That's how long we stood in line. And we were able to get in, and the line just kept going and going and going, even after we got in. And it's packed in there. So obviously you can't have rallies anymore.
So you mean to tell me that thousands and thousands of people line up and pack into a venue to cheer on our president, and now we can't do that? Why would we stop that?
Let me put it like this. The capacity of that arena was 8,500. And I had asked one of the line checkers, and when we were walking through, and I was like, just estimate, because he'd been there since 4 that morning. And he's like, I asked him, I was like, where do you figure we might be in line so I know if I'm getting in or not? And he's like, oh no, you're like probably 3,000 in, you're good. I looked back behind me, I was like, oh crap. And even when we got up to the arena, which took quite some time, we didn't get up to the arena until like 3:30 that afternoon. Looking back, the line was just as long as when I first got there, if not longer. In total, I think they sat 8,500, close to that, and there were still about like 7,000 outside waiting to see the president, unlike a certain Democratic nominee who can barely get 2 people in the diner to talk to him.
Tens of people are waiting to see the Democrats.
Tens of people. That's right. Big numbers. Woo, get out the calculator. All right, so, there's the rallies. Then you have to think about the U.S. and China trade negotiation and how that was going. And then all of a sudden, it's not dead in water per se, but it's not moving forward, and especially with, where this event came from. allegedly. That's something you've got to look at. Think about the Democratic nominee. He just came out yesterday for Memorial Day, which I'm not going to talk bad about that. At least he came out and did what he did there. But that was the first time he'd been out in a while. And then apparently he was on The View today. Haven't watched that yet. Can't wait to see how that went down. But ultimately, what's going on there, I think, is he's being sheltered. Because, look at his gaffes. And try not to talk bad about Democrats, but come on. How can you honestly vote for a dude that incompetent? Like, I know y'all had something to say about Trump, and I understand that. And I even had some of those same questions when I first found out he was running, but it wasn't nowhere near this train wreck. But so they're sheltering, right?
You keep him hidden away from everybody, and then he can't mess up as much.
And then another thing is you're able with this event to delay the Democratic Party convention. That's still up in the air as to when that's going down, and maybe even where. So that's another thing.
Why would we want to delay that? There's a good question there, but I think we'll touch upon that later.
Okay. This episode, or?
No, maybe in another episode.
Okay, we'll save it for later then. Well, I'm not going to go into this because that goes into that, so I'll move on to the next. How do you convince Democratic Party voters to accept what's going on? You got anything on that?
Well, I think and I hate saying it, I think they just kind of follow the leader, per se. And that may be an unfair assessment, but it seems as though where one Democrat goes, they all go. And I think it's easier for them to swallow. Hey, stay in your house. Hey, do this. Hey, do that. Hey, wait for your mail-in ballot to come.
Well, and the same could be said for us with our support for Trump, but our support comes from a different space, per se, in that we both researched heavily on the movement and what's going on. And being former law enforcement, we don't just jump to a conclusion. We look into and investigate everything that we come across to make sure that, we're not being hosed on something. And some of this we may be being hosed on, but, ultimately, like, as a movement, we're pretty convicted in what we believe and what we've seen, and the things that have been put out there, as far as saying this is going to happen in the future. They have been happening, specifically this week. Apparently this week is supposed to be a very big week. So it boils down to, you have to ask yourself, is this about the election or is this about the event? And the timing of it and everything that's going on, I think it makes pretty much complete sense as to what's going on. Just step back and look at it, and you can kind of figure out where we're headed and what's going on there.
One thing we can say is that when the event started and when certain other things happened, like the articles of impeachment handed over and the China trade agreement, all those things happened on the same day. So is it a coincidence? Maybe, but I highly, highly doubt it. All these things, I believe, started on January 15th.
Yeah.
And
the articles got pushed over to the Senate, and then one day later, our first case of the event in the United States in Seattle was put out there. So we went from impeachment immediately into the event. So that's something I think you really got to question, look at, and think about. So ultimately, that kind of sums up post 4245. At the end of the post, the question is posed: is it time to stand? And I think it is time to stand. I think you're seeing people stand. They're tired of not working. They're tired of losing money. They're tired of not knowing anything really and questioning everything, because nothing that's come about the event has been fairly true. There's a lot of speculation, and there's still a lot of questions to this day. So with that, it's a long post, 4245, but that kind of sums up what you're reading there on the screen over there as we've been showing it.
We'll switch gears a little bit and we'll go back to post 4222. And this kind of ties into the post that we talked about earlier. But you can see the media cameras on, they put their masks on, and cameras off, the masks come off on May 12th. So I mean, why would you do that? Why would somebody on camera wear a mask, but as soon as the camera's off, take that mask off? I mean, if you were truly worried about the event, I think I would stay with my mask on. But that's just me. So that's pretty much what post 4222 goes into. If you have a chance, look at it. Look at that day, look at the media, and kind of decipher for yourself where that goes.
Well, and then following that drop is 4218, which is the next drop. As you'll see, there's a video clip over here, and it's showing media taking off masks when the cameras are not on. Well, obviously, it wouldn't be on video if there wasn't a camera on, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay. But someone caught them when they thought the cameras were off, taking their masks off. So I guess you got to ask yourself, what do these people think of me when they see me walking around with a mask on? How do they feel about me? Do they think I'm a sheep? Do they laugh at me behind closed doors? I think it was just yesterday, there was a news reporter, I don't know exactly where, the video's gone viral over the internet, but he's standing there in his mask and talking about all these people that aren't in masks. So this guy with the cell phone recording comes up and he's like, well, you got a mask on, but your camera guy doesn't, and basically calls out his entire crew. So, going back to 4245, when we were talking about division and being divisive, that's what they're doing right here. And that's something that I feel we, as Americans and as patriots, need to pay attention to and understand that is going on. So, that sums up the drops that kind of tie to the event as we've gone through this. So we're going to step away from the drops. You can always go to qmap.pub and look up those drops if you want to. They're also over here on the side of the screen for you to read and look at while you're listening to us.
I think we're going to have an episode about Q in the near future. So we'll give a little more explanation as to who Q is, how to read the drops, and that kind of information in case you're new and you don't understand exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that'll be next week's episode.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's talk about some local observations. I know just in my experience, being out, I do go out even during the whole event. I've been, going to the store. I was the one picked to go to the store for the family. So at first it seemed about 50-50, wearing masks, not wearing masks. Now it seems about like 1 in every 10, maybe about there. And I don't necessarily search out the people that are wearing masks and go, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? But it appears as though people that are wearing masks will definitely search me out and say, why aren't you wearing a mask? Or, you get that special little look where, why are you doing what you're doing? So that's been my observation lately. I don't, obviously instigate or try to converse with those people unless it's on a more calm basis. But I don't take offense to it.
Have you had anybody say anything to you?
I've had one person say something to me, and it wasn't even like, why are you doing this? It was just like, hey, you should be wearing a mask to protect other people. But my retort to that was, well, I'm personally not sick. If you are afraid, then you're doing the right thing by wearing a mask. And if anybody else is afraid, they can choose the same thing too. But that was pretty much the only thing. And we parted ways. Like, it was, kind of a mutual respect. So, there are people out there that are very respectful. I will point out one thing, and this bugs me the most. And you'll probably hear me talk about this more than once on our podcast. When I was the person that didn't like going to the store before, even though I did, because people are rude and they don't have manners and they don't have to say excuse me or pardon me or I'm sorry, just basic manners. So I always hated going to the store, but it seems as though with this event going on, people are 10 times worse. So it makes it a store trip very awful.
So I don't go to the store simply because it never fails. Like, every time I go there, I either run into my old neighbor who hates my guts and attacks me in the vegetable aisle, or I get attacked by a bunch of old ladies with shopping carts and they hit me in the ankles and the heels and in the butt all the time. So it's like, I'm just like, hey, I'm not going there. I'm not. Nope. I'm gonna stay out of there. And
So Mayhem is not just a name; it's a actual being.
yeah, no, I bring mayhem, or they bring it to me, however that goes. So speaking about the mask thing, I actually have owning and running a tattoo shop. I'm required by the health department to wear a mask as are my clients, which I don't have a problem with. But something I looked into it, and I was, because do I really want to? No, because it's a little fairly restrictive, and sometimes it gets in the way of my vision, which is an important thing when you're putting a permanent piece of art on someone. But I went to the CDC and I looked up their basically their statement on surgical masks, and I'll read it real quick. It says, "We did not find evidence that surgical type face masks are effective in reducing laboratory confirmed influenza transmission, either when worn by infected persons, source control, or by persons in the general community to reduce their susceptibility." So that's something to think about. Are the masks just a symbol for something? And sometimes, and most of the time, I like to think they are. However, I want to keep my business, so I'm going to follow the guidelines that have been set by the health department. But in your own personal life and practices, that's something that you should really think about. I'm not saying we're all for everybody's health. We don't want to take it that far, but at the same time, like, we also don't want to look like sheep. So, did you have anything?
I think what you're trying to reference to is compliant versus constitutional.
Yeah.
So I think that's exactly, you hit the nail right on the head. Obviously, there are some reasons we need to be compliant, but there are other reasons, constitutional reasons where you may not feel you need to do that, and that is your right, and we support that.
Well, and I've had clients come in that don't want to wear the mask, and they oppose it, but they've been kind enough to do that for me because they understand what kind of weight that carries on me if they don't. And so I haven't had that issue, but I've talked to them about it. And I had one lady specifically that said that she was in the grocery store not wearing her mask because she doesn't wear a mask when she's out and about. And there was a family walking by her, gave her a look, and they had masks on. They all pulled down their masks and leaned over and coughed on her. So, that's not just in other places. That's going on here. And so when she told me that, I found that fairly interesting, that was, going on, especially with local people. I would think better of them, but everybody is their own being, so they will do what they will do.
I think what the other thing we need to touch on is critical thinking. So obviously, we're giving you a lot of information here. We're passing, some things that we know, things that we've done research, but we want you to think critically, think on your own. Don't necessarily take what everybody says as true. I think that was one of the big Q things was, do your research. Always, question everything.
Well, that's why we're here.
Right? So where do we go from here, Mayhem?
Okay. I think things are getting better. I think everybody's kind of seeing that. We're starting to come out. Apparently tomorrow here, we are able to go to restaurants.
To sit down in a restaurant. I never thought I would say I wanted to do that so badly.
Yeah. All you gotta do is call in for a reservation. Obviously the seating is going to be limited, but that shows us that steps are being made in the right direction, and that's definitely a positive. Are we out of the woods? No, I don't think we're out of the woods in the least, but things are getting better. Definitely here for us in Colorado. I know that not every state can say that. I have a sister-in-law in California, and I've not heard from her, but I've seen things on the news that are going on there, and it doesn't look like things are getting much better. I hope that they will, especially for her. Luckily, she still has a job, so that's good. But the thing to think about with all of this is the impact that they want to have on voting. Something you also have to think about being that we both worked in a jail. Inmates being released. There's an inmate that was released just a couple days ago from our local jail and he was to serve a 2-year sentence. He served 48 days. He got out and he ended up strangling someone. So I think it's their goal to kind of let the worst of the worst out, to create havoc and to keep you scared and to keep you at home. because you're afraid that you might be accosted or get in a confrontation or have a convicted felon do something to you because they've been released because of this event. So yeah, there's a lot of negatives there for you to process, but I want you to kind of think about that and what that means. Always practice awareness, situational awareness. Where are you at? Who are you around? Because you are going to start seeing offenders get released, whether you like it or not. Never thought I would see this day. Usually it was because there was jail crowding, not of some event that had artificial event that had come up.
Yeah, we worked there for a long time, and I can only think of maybe 2 times where we actually released people early because it was, crowded, or they, just needed the space.
I had dudes sleeping in the gym, like,
right.
I mean, even on the floor in booking, like you had to step around dudes on beds in the middle of your walkway. So, and we still weren't necessarily letting people out. We were our numbers were surpassing what we could actually physically house.
I'm pretty sure the people we let out were getting out in, a week or a couple days. So we weren't letting people, who had to serve 2 years getting out after 48 days.
Yeah. And as I understand it, the DA actually fought the judge on that, and the DA obviously lost. However, in the end, I wouldn't say he won because there's no positive to that, but obviously he was right in what he had to say about that. So you can look at it as it's basically an attempt to tear down. That's what we're dealing with, is they're attempting to tear us down as patriots, as Americans, even as just human beings. Like and you know who they are. And we will go into who they are a little bit in another show, on our Patriot Phil show. Like I said, just be aware of your surroundings. Don't feed into the fear porn, because that's what it is. They're just trying to get you jacked up and be afraid. But ultimately, look at where you're at locally. Your city, your county, because sometimes, and I think you agree, we get wrapped up in everything we see online, and we're like, oh my God, what's going on? And we start freaking out. But take a breath. Stop for a minute, look around, and are things really that bad?
That may not necessarily be where you live. And I think.
Oh, well, I haven't been to your side of town yet.
Right. We all don't live in New York or California, where, obviously a lot of the event has been placed in front of us for everybody to see. But, your area may not be quite as bad. So, like Mayhem said, take a breath and, do what you got to do and try and start living your life again.
And ultimately, and our whole reason behind the show is we just want you to be informed. We want to provide the information that you can use to become informed, or to assist you and give you something that kind of sparks the fire to where you start digging and start looking into these things. You're like, this really interests me. This makes more sense than what I'm seeing right now, whether it be on TV or out in public. So it's all about just being informed. That's what this is about, and that's what each show is going to continue to be. And we'll probably build on this for the next couple shows in some points, not too much. But as things come, kind of just our perspective of what we're seeing, and what's been put in the drops, because the drops, we usually get a couple drops each day, if not more, of information, and that way we can source that out to you, so that you can be more aware of what's going on. So with that, you got anything else?
No, Mayhem, I think that's quite a bit of information for one show.
Yeah, we ran a little long, but those were some long drops, and I apologize if we lost some people. But ultimately, it's good information, and I think here in about the next year, in about a year from now, you're going to look back and be like, wow, this is crazy what's going on here, and the information that these two were able to kind of push out to us and give us. So, if nothing else, that's what we want for you. So I think we're going to wrap it up.
Before we wrap it up, I just want to say one thing.
Oh, what's that?
I just want to congratulate Mr. Ratcliffe. He was sworn in today. Congratulations, sir.
New DNI Ratcliffe. Yes, congratulations. I think the hammer is coming.
Well, the Grinnell and Ratcliffe duo is something I definitely want to see.
Should be nice. All right. Is that it?
That should be it. So let's wrap this up. It was good talking with everybody. We will see you next show. This is Raydio.
And this is Mayhem, signing off.
We'll see you guys later.